You are watching Netrush Report, where we bring you the raw, real, and unfiltered stories behind the biggest headlines in tennis. Make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the bell, because today's episode digs deep into Andy Roddick's explosive reaction, Holger Rune'S devastating injury, and the growing player revolt against the brutal tennis calendar. It was supposed to be a routine semifinal for Holger Rune. The Dane had cruised through his first 2 matches in Stockholm, looking confident and ready to add another trophy to his growing collection. He started his semifinal clash against Hugo Humbert strong, taking the first set 6-4, looking composed, and showing flashes of the fiery, fearless Rune the tennis world knows so well. But then, in the 5th game of the second set, everything unraveled. At 2-2, Rune sprinted toward the net for a quick recovery shot, and suddenly froze. He dropped his racket. His face contorted in pain. And within seconds, the young star was on the court, clutching his Achilles, tears welling in his eyes. The stadium fell silent. Commentators' voices cracked as they realized what was happening. Holger Rune, just 22 years old, was forced to retire from the match. His dream of finishing the season strong had turned into a nightmare. As Rune hobbled off the court, the crowd stood and applauded, not for victory, but for courage. For the human side of an athlete who had just seen his season, and maybe his career momentum, shatter in a single moment. Soon after the match, the diagnosis came in, a severe Achilles injury. One of the most dreaded injuries in sports. Rune's camp confirmed that he would likely be out for several months, anywhere between 3 to 6, depending on recovery. In an emotional Instagram post, Rune wrote, "This is one of the hardest moments of my career. I gave everything to this season, but sometimes your body says enough." His mother, Annick Rune, followed up with a chilling statement. "The doctors told us it's serious. Holger will be out for a long time. But what frustrates me the most is that this was avoidable. These schedules are punishing our players." And that's when the storm began. Players started speaking up. From Taylor Fritz to Casper Ruud, Jack Draper to Alexander Bublik. Voices across the ATP Tour united in a rare moment of agreement. The schedule is too much. To understand their frustration, you have to look at how tennis actually works. Unlike most sports, tennis doesn't have an off-season worth mentioning. There's barely any recovery time. Players jump from one continent to another, from the humidity of Asia to the indoor cold of Europe, often with less than a week between tournaments. The ATP season officially runs from January to November. But in reality, players are training and traveling all year round, leaving maybe 2 or 3 weeks to actually rest their bodies. And that's not just a fitness issue. It's a health crisis waiting to happen. Holger Rune isn't the first casualty. Earlier this year, we saw similar fatigue injuries hit Carlos Alcaraz, Jannik Sinner, and even the Iron Man himself, Novak Djokovic, who skipped multiple events citing exhaustion. Even young talents like Jack Draper have dealt with chronic physical issues. And when players as different as Djokovic, Rune, and Draper are all breaking down, you know something's wrong at the system level. After Rune's injury, the voices came pouring in. Taylor Fritz, who's been one of the most outspoken players about the packed schedule, said bluntly, "There's just too much tennis. People don't realize how hard it is to keep up mentally and physically." Casper Ruud echoed him, explaining that even with perfect conditioning, recovery is nearly impossible with the current pace. And Alexander Bublik, known for his candid honesty, went one step further, calling the tour a machine that breaks players. The frustration wasn't about one tournament. It was about the system itself, the endless grind that leaves little room for rest, family, or even joy. But among all these voices, one man's opinion stood out, not just because of his experience, but because of his sharp, truth-telling reputation. That man was Andy Roddick. When Andy Roddick speaks, the tennis world listens. The former world #1, US Open champion, and one of the sport's most respected analysts, didn't hold back when asked about Rune's injury and the mounting criticism of the ATP schedule. He began by acknowledging reality. You can't blame the calendar for every injury. Sometimes it's just bad luck. But then came the sting. That said, this schedule is helping nobody's health. It's too much, especially for younger players who are still growing into their bodies and for veterans trying to hang on. Roddick's point hit hard because it came from a man who lived it. During his career, Roddick himself battled fatigue, scheduling issues, and mental burnout, long before the tour was even this crowded. He explained that the ATP needs to rethink the balance between competition and rest, suggesting a clearer off-season and more structured rotation to prevent overuse injuries. And he's not alone. Many insiders, from coaches to physiotherapists, have been echoing that same warning. If the ATP doesn't adapt soon, the sport will lose its biggest stars to injury before their peak. Let's talk science for a moment. The average ATP player now plays over 80 matches a year, plus travel, training, and promotional commitments. Each hard-court season brings a heavy toll on the joints, particularly the knees, hips, and Achilles. Medical studies have shown that repeated impact without sufficient recovery leads to micro-tears that eventually become full-blown injuries. Holger Rune'S case fits that description perfectly. Sports doctors have confirmed that Achilles injuries rarely happen out of nowhere. They're the result of accumulated stress, small warning signs ignored over time because the schedule leaves no room to stop. And when rest isn't an option, injury becomes inevitable. After days of silence, Holger Rune finally broke his silence on social media. His post was brief but heartfelt. "I'm heartbroken. This isn't how I wanted my season to end, but I'll come back stronger. Thank you for your messages and support." The image showed Rune sitting in a hospital chair, one leg in a protective boot, his face calm but distant. Fans flooded the comments with messages of love and encouragement, but the underlying emotion was frustration. Not just sadness for Rune, but anger that yet another promising career has been stalled by a system that refuses to change. And the truth is, Rune's injury may have long-term consequences. Achilles' recovery can take months, and even then, full mobility and confidence don't return overnight. The road ahead is uncertain. So how did the ATP respond? In typical fashion, carefully, cautiously, and without much accountability. A spokesperson expressed sympathy for Rune and all injured players, but stopped short of acknowledging that the tour schedule itself might be part of the problem. Behind the scenes, insiders say ATP executives are discussing possible reforms, such as reducing mandatory event requirements or giving players more flexible rest options. But for now, those are just words. And as fans have seen time and again, real change in tennis usually comes after too many careers have already been cut short. Why doesn't the ATP just fix the schedule? One word: money. Tennis is a global sport with events across every continent. Every tournament brings in sponsors, broadcasters, and massive economic impact, especially ATP 500 and Masters events. Cutting tournaments would mean cutting revenue. And in a sport that depends on individual event organizers and national federations, no one wants to give up their slice of the pie. The result? Players keep grinding. Injuries pile up, and stars like Rune pay the price. It's a brutal cycle, and one that even legends like Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal have warned about. In 2019, Nadal said it best: "We can't play 11 months a year. It's impossible, but we do it because that's the system." 6 years later, nothing has changed. Andy Roddick ended his commentary with a chilling warning. If we keep pushing players like this, the next generation will burn out before they even reach 25. Tennis has to decide, do we want longevity or exhaustion? And that's the question haunting the sport today. For every Jannik Sinner, Carlos Alcaraz, and Holger Rune rising through the ranks, there's a real risk they'll spend as much time recovering as competing. Roddick's message wasn't just a criticism, it was a call to action. Because the next injury might not just sideline a player. It might end a career. Fans, too, have joined the outcry. Social media exploded after Rune's injury, with hashtags like #FixTheSchedule and #PlayerHealthFirst trending within hours. Comments flooded ATP's official pages. How many more players have to get hurt? This isn't sport, it's survival. Listen to the players before it's too late. Even casual fans are beginning to see what insiders have known for years. Tennis has become an endurance test, not just a competition. As for Holger Rune, recovery won't be easy. Achilles' rehabilitation is slow, painful, and mentally draining. His mother confirmed that Rune will miss several key tournaments, including possibly the Australian Open, depending on how his healing progresses. But Rune has always been a fighter. This setback could become a defining moment, one that shapes his mental resilience for the rest of his career. Still, his absence leaves a hole in the tour. Because players like Rune aren't just competitors, They're the future faces of the sport. And losing them, even temporarily, hurts tennis as a whole. One of the most haunting things about this whole episode is the silence from certain corners of the ATP leadership. While legends and players have spoken up, official reform proposals remain non-existent. The machine keeps rolling, and the silence grows louder. But if there's one thing tennis history teaches us, it's that change often starts with outrage. And right now, outrage is exactly what's spreading. Andy Roddick's statement will likely be remembered not just as a soundbite, but as a turning point. When history looks back on this era of tennis, the post-Big Three transition, it might not just be remembered for new champions, but for how the sport treated its rising stars. Was it nurturing them, or breaking them? Rune's injury is a tragic reminder that greatness can't thrive on burnout. It requires time, care, and a system that values health over headlines. Holger Rune'S tears in Stockholm weren't just about pain. They were about a message. A warning that the sport he loves might be pushing too far. Andy Roddick's words echo that same truth. This schedule is helping nobody's health. Maybe it's time tennis finally listened. You've been watching Netrush Report. Your home for the stories that matter most in the world of tennis. If you believe players deserve better, hit like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed for more deep dives like this one. Because here, we don't just report tennis. We stand up for the players who make it worth watching.